You had a quite tight schedule for Islam.
ऐसा वैसा मैं अभी आया हूँ and I went straight to the मेरी वो किताब है उसके टॉप पे चला गया.
That's fine, it's fine. Actually, so when my colleagues found out that you were coming,
जी.
two very important things they all want to talk about. I think you're pretty aware of the first. You're pretty aware, of course. The only survivor, one of the two survivors. It's almost like life chose you.
सीधा मसला ये है कि luckily I actually fainted before the crash.
Okay.
तो वो जो crunch period होता है between the crash and when I escaped and I got the consciousness, वो कोई मुझे memory नहीं. तो that's why it doesn't hound me much.
So that it's kind of a blessing then, क्या?
Absolutely. सबसे बड़ी blessing उसमें है ही.
And when you woke up?
So when I got the consciousness, I was already rescued.
You were in the hospital?
नहीं, उस वक्त मुझे वो निकाल के लेके जा रहे थे towards the ambulance.
I've heard so many good things about your office, and that was the second thing
आजे,
my colleagues want to
आजे,
know. So if we're in over, we definitely want to talk about it.
असल में तो वहाँ स्टूडियो बनाया हुआ है.
जी मैंने सुना हैरी पॉटर की बहुत अच्छी कलेक्शन है आपके पास.
जी.
अच्छा नाइस. Are you a fan?
हैरी पॉटर की नहीं, हैरी पॉटर की तो किताबें हमारे पास रखी हुई है. हमारे पास लाइब्रेरी बहुत अच्छी है.
Oh nice. So मैं आपकी वीडियो देख रही थी. So when you're talking about people from that specific तबका, किसान हो गया, कोई हो गया, उनको तो एजुकेट करना भी बहुत जरूरी है. That is something we will talk about.
हमारे पास बहुत कीमती डेटा मौजूद है. बैंकों के पास बहुत अच्छा डेटा है, नादरा के पास बहुत अच्छा डेटा है, SBI के पास बहुत अच्छा डेटा है, पावर कंपनीज के पास बहुत अच्छा डेटा है, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पंजाब उसके पास PLRA के पास बहुत अच्छा डेटा है.
चाय, कॉफी,
जो काली चाय बगैर दूध दवाए से. At the end of the day, 2/3 of the country is Punjab, especially when it comes to agriculture and industry. Factually अच्छा खासा डेटा मौजूद है. It's just that data is not talking to each other. Very nice.
So आपको यहाँ भी पता नहीं चलता था कि कब का बड़ा है.
No, not at all. तो हमें इंस्पिरेशन लेनी चाहिए आपसे.
Yeah.
ठीक है. Well, my Nana was the editor of Jan for between him and his brother for 40 years, from India to Pakistan.
Welcome back to another episode of Chatroom with Shizza. I'm going to talk about something really interesting today. I know I say that every time, but well, we did discuss this lightly last month, but I feel like I didn't do justice because that was only the government's perspective. I also need the private sector's perspective, government's partners' perspective. You thought about it right. I am going to talk about cashless economy, something that Islamabad is first striving for, and eventually we want all of Pakistan to go cashless. And to talk about this, I have someone in the studio with me, President and CEO of Bank of Punjab, Chairman of Pakistan Banks Association, also Chairman of OGDCL. Welcome, Zafar Masud. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Shizza. And you did a great job, by the way, on the last one with the Minister Saab. And I was really looking forward to having this conversation with you now.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I know what a busy man you are. First things first, I know now that you've seen my guest, I know what you're thinking. No, unfortunately, we're not going to be talking about his survival story. That's a story for another day, for another podcast. Today, we're only
And
talking
there's a promise to that.
There's a promise to that. So do stay tuned. Today, we're only talking about cashless economy. Zafar Saab, last time we spoke with the minister, we did get a bit of details on what was on the agenda. I think they were just starting and they were trying to get all the stakeholders on board. Let's just start with all the update and all the developments that have taken place, please.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And, this is one topic which is very close to my heart. And this is one topic which is very critical for the economy, for the future generations. And that's how we need to all look at it, beyond our own vested interests. in the larger scheme of things, it will benefit everybody at the end of the day. Shizza, if I were to take a step back and I start out where this problem is emanating from, the estimate is that around 59 to 64% of our economy is not documented.
That's a huge number.
That's a big number. It's almost the same size as our GDP, and the result is that that trickles down into many different facets, starting from the fact that the government's own ability to raise funding through the taxes is really hampered. I mean, if you just take into account this particular 60% of the economy out of the ambit of documentation, you are actually talking about increasing the tax to GDP, doubling it by what the real the existing collection is. And therefore, it is important that we need to bring people into the system, so that the government's overall collection becomes better, and their reliance on the banks to do the funding for fiscal deficit disappears.
Right.
The banking industry has been criticized for lending to the government alone. The fact of the matter is we really don't want to do it. We would like to do the lending to the private sector, but the private sector need to be ready with it as well. And for that, it's important that this cashless economy needs to be converted into a documented economy. So that's the first part. The second part, why it is important, because if such a large number of the economy is undocumented, then the banks will remain always at deficit to provide or increase the private sector lending. Banks deal in documents. They need some kind of evidence about the company's businesses, and therefore it's important for them to have some kind of documentation in place.
Mr. Zafar, I'm really sorry to cut you off here, but you mentioned that if we're able to get on board with this throughout Pakistan, we are looking at probably doubling the tax to GDP ratio. But my question is this a realistic goal? Is this just ambitious?
So this is just the peripheries that I was talking about. The real thing, and this is the last piece, but the most important one. To me, documentation, financial inclusion, documentation, going cashless is actually empowering those communities and people who currently are not part of the documentation process. Why? Because that way they will be able to access the funding sources. They will become part of the formal system, whereby they will be able to transact in the most efficient manner. There is a cost of carrying cash and storing cash as well. If you have that digital means of payment, their cost will go down, their cost of doing business will improve, and therefore their own welfare will improve, their access to credit will improve, and this is what the biggest benefit to the individual is. The other advantages are the periphery advantages of increasing the tax to GDP and taking care of the government's fiscal aspect. But the real impact is on the empowerment of the people when they become part of the documentation process. And Shizza, when we were talking, off camera as well, you raised a very important point that one of the biggest challenges is to make people realize why it is important in their for them and in their best interest to become to become part of the documented economy.
I do really want to get to that, Mr. Zafar, but so here's the thing. I asked the minister this also, and I actually got quite some slack for that after the recording. It's because I asked him, it's kind of too late to start an initiative like that. And my point is that we live in 2025. The world is operating cashless. But why now? How do you think, is this the right time to actually start such a huge movement? Because, and I say huge movement because this requires a lot of education.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. The problem has become too acute in the last few decades, actually. So if I were to give you a technical response to this, Shiza, which I really don't want to delve into because your audience will prefer if I talk in a layman's language and
Yeah, let's keep it simple.
they can understand and relate to it. The fact of the matter is that the cash economy has actually mushroomed a lot, expanded a lot in the last few decades. It's now close to around 10 trillion rupees. The total banking deposit is around 36 trillion, and 10 trillion is out of the system because it's through the cash. And if you look at the flip side, the interesting part is that the government, because of their fiscal deficit, has to pump in liquidity into the banking system and then borrow it from there. That amount has also happened to be around 13 trillion rupees. So if you will be able to document this 10 trillion, which is not a realistic number, this will never be completely documented. But if the large number is documented in the economy, the money will come into the system. The government, which is what they're paying extra to the government to the banks for using their balance sheet by pumping in more liquidity, will also disappear. And that is the reason why it's become more imperative and important for the government to pursue this now than ever before. Secondly, Shiza, simple principle economics is that it's very inflationary in nature. When you have cash transaction, it's very inflationary in nature. The flip side is also very inflationary, which is government printing more cash in layman's term and putting it into the banking system and then borrowing it from the banks. This is very inflationary proposition. So therefore, rather than making things affordable for the individuals, you are actually making it difficult for people to make their ends meet because the prices are increasing substantially. The third most important thing is that when you have cash economy, then it also encourages those transactions which are undesirable transactions, across the border transactions, the under the table transactions. So therefore, the moment you move away from there will be a behavioral change which will take place, and it's a societal shift that you will see. And to my mind, why it is important? Because we are now at a crossroads where this behavioral change in the society is the key to making an impact in our economy, in our society, for our future generations.
Right, makes sense. Mr. Zafar, you mentioned layman's perspective. Can I mention a narrative that is going around ever since people started hearing about this cashless economy initiative? And these are people who are actually taxpayers I'm talking about. They say that with this initiative, first of all, the government has tabs on each and every transaction you make. Fair enough, sure, because if you're not doing anything illegal, you shouldn't be scared. That point is covered. But one thing that bothers them is that the top 1% of Pakistan will probably still stay out of the traction of taxes. When you're bringing on board people from, let's say, downtrodden segments of the society or smaller businesses, or we recently had the cashless market, Itwar Bazaar, ladies and gentlemen, went cashless. So now you can actually go to Itwar Bazaar and Juma Bazaar with only your ATM cards or your Apple Pay. These are the people who you want to bring on board.
Look, by default, when the transaction is digitized, you will tend to have some kind of visibility of the transaction. The important thing is that even if you have the tap on the transaction, do you have the political will to impose taxes on it or not? The problem right now is not that big on the lack of documentation when you talk about that particular segment of 1% which is not paying taxes, is because the political will is lacking to impose taxes on them. Just to give you a number, Shiza, 52% of the economy, the three sectors in the economy, are merely contributing 3.6% towards the taxes, direct taxes I'm talking about. And I'll be very particular when I say direct taxes, because then people start freaking out. You're talking about, everybody's paying taxes and indirect taxes and sales tax and blah,
It's
blah,
just a
blah. They're
scary
right.
word.
They're right about it, but I'm talking about direct taxes. 52% of the economy merely contributing 3.6%. That is the documented part I'm talking about,
Right.
let alone the non-documented part. And that is the reason why it's more to do with the political decision making than the cashless piece per se.
All right. I'm going to show you a little video over here, and this is a perspective for you. When you and me, when we think about this initiative of going cashless in Pakistan, yes, we are going to be impacted by it in a good way, of course. I mean, isn't it convenient when we go to shops or airports or bazaars for that matter, and you don't have to take out your wallet and, count your cash? It's just convenient to pay with your card. But the people who are actually going to benefit from this are small business owners. Take a look at this video, and when we come back, I have a question for Mr. Zafar.
मेरा नाम मोहम्मद तारिक है। मैं खाद बीज और ज़री अदवायात का कारोबार कर रहा हूँ। वज़ीर-ए-आज़म कैशलेस इकॉनमी इक़दाम के तहत गुज़श्ता 3 माह से रास QR के ज़रिए ट्रांजैक्शन कर रहा हूँ। इस निज़ाम ने मेरे कारोबार में बेहद सहूलत पैदा की है।
All right. So from this video, the only and the first thing that comes to my mind is, first of all, congratulations. Great initiative.
Thank you.
But it brings me back to digital awareness and financial awareness in education, because I think we discussed this earlier before the podcast also, but this is something, it's a change that people are going to make. Change is always scary. So with people like this, how are you educating them in terms of scams and tax frauds and everything?
So look, Shizza, the important aspect is that, in order to improve adoption, you need to have proper incentive system in place. People adopt on their own when they see the benefit right there. With the danda, you can take things that far only.
That's true.
You can only force people to do something to that extent. But when you built in the incentive for them to adopt to something and to opt for something, then you see people responding to it very quickly. And we experienced that. Although I know I'm talking in the capacity of the committee member of Cashless Pakistan initiative of the Prime Minister, and also as the chairman of Pakistan Banks Association, but I can't help but to share with you that our experience at Bank of Punjab, when we introduced Kisan Card, we were also very skeptical. How will the Kisan respond to it? But they responded really well to the whole thing, because there was a clear incentive for them of going for quality inputs at interest-free financing. And that incentive was good enough for them to go for the adoption on their own, rather than we forcing them or pushing them to that point. Similar thing happened, by the way, in the case of Punjab also, and I think the Sindh also did it later on, where the restaurants were given a break on the services tax, sales tax on services, where if you pay through the card, then the tax is around 5% or something like that, or 12%, and if you are paying through cash, then the tax was 17.5% or something. And people actually opted for making payments through the card in
Yes,
digital
same.
version.
I did too. Because I was like, why do I have to pay extra if I have to pay cash?
And on top of that, interestingly enough, Shizza, you seem to be aware of this and experienced it. I don't know if you won anything in the lottery too.
Unfortunately not.
Okay, so there was a lottery piece to it as well. So the receipt that you would have would be entitled for a lottery too.
Nice.
And we are thinking on the similar lines to do this in the Cashless Pakistan initiative as well of the Prime Minister, whereby, you incentivize people for adoption.
Right.
And this is what, and trust me, when you develop people's interest into something, they're more receptive to learning and changing and adopting to something even very noble.
And I feel like that is the main challenge. How do you bring everyone on board? And also, from what I discussed with the minister earlier, from what I have read about this movement, retailers seem to be the biggest impediment. Are you able to get all of them on board? Like you said, you have to show them, you have to incentivize them. How do you incentivize them?
So, yes, the retailers uh, were reluctant, but what we've done is that we have, and now there's the other portion that we really need to work on is making cash expensive for transaction purposes. So if somebody has to withdraw cash or pay in cash, then there is a charge to it with the banks. We haven't gotten to that point, but this is one of the agendas on our list that we would like to pursue at some point in time. Following the same principle, what we've done is that if the digital means is used for making a payment through RAST, which is the railroad, which is the base through which the transaction flows through, the backbone which supports the digital transaction, then there will be no charge to the retailer. Now, just to explain to your audience that the biggest advantage of paying through the card, which is the most popular source of payment through digital mean. Now the apps are also there, as you were mentioning, the great move done by CDA as part of this Cashless Pakistan initiative only. You can actually pay through the app as well. But the card has been the most popular one, or app. There was a charge that the retailer was supposed to pay extra, around 1%ish. Why? Because people will tend to buy more. It was one of the ways for the retailer to sell more, so they'd never mind giving 1% away to this thing. Now that 1% has taken away, the government is paying it to the banks, but the retailer doesn't have to pay anything. So they have the incentive. The retailer has the incentive now to go through the digital payment, sell more without paying any extra charge on it.
Okay, makes sense.
And then, Shizza, people don't realize it. Cash has its own costs. The handling of cash, the security cost it's actually a cost which is a hidden cost perhaps, but the cost is very much there. And people would prefer, if they don't have to pay extra charges, of doing large transactions through digital means rather than doing it for cash.
Right. And it's so interesting when you say that cash is expensive because it makes you think, how can cash be expensive? But very well explained. So am I right in understanding or assuming this, that at one point in time, probably, let's say for Islamabad for now, in the near future, the challi wala on the road that I'm going to buy a challi from, I don't have to take out cash.
QR code.
They will have them. Amazing. Is it true that the government is providing subsidies to buy any equipment needed for this?
So with the QR code, it will actually replace those machines.
All right. So we don't even need machines anymore.
Shizza, it's a very intelligent question that you raised. I must say, I didn't catch it earlier. But now I realize that you have actually asked a very intelligent question. Yes, there was the biggest impediment from the banks and from the retailer's perspective used to be investment in that machine that you use for the payment. Now that machine is gone. That is replaced by a QR code, which is like a code specific to that merchant, issued and just pasted on the table or on the wall, and you just go and show your app there, and the payment goes through.
Amazing.
And also the advantage to the retailer is that he gets the money immediately in his account, which in case of cash, he has to make an effort. So I pointed out you two things: security, handling, putting it somewhere, storage, but also the transportation cost of the cash.
Right.
He doesn't have to go anywhere now. it takes some kind of effort to take that cash to the bank to deposit it somewhere, and especially we are talking about large stacks of cash. If or even if you are not going every day, you may be going once a week or twice a week. There is a cost of that transportation too.
Of course.
So storage, transportation, security. In all respects, you will get the money in your saving account with 1 day lag, and you will start making money on that from a merchant's perspective, from a retailer's perspective. You start making money on that cash on day one, rather than putting it in a storage with you and deposit it whenever you are going to the bank.
Again, makes sense. And I would say for business owners, medium or small, this is definitely a good initiative. But it also makes me think, when you're making transactions digital, then you also have to make documentation and records digital. We live in a country where we have decades of records on paper. How many parties have to come to the same page for this? How many organizations are coming together for this? And also, is it an ordeal digitizing the data?
Again, very good question. So, interestingly enough, Shizza, we have a treasure trove of data available with us in various different pockets. It's just that it's not talking to each other, and hence not being used to the maximum benefit possible. Nadra has gold data. Banks have brilliant data. FBR has diamond data. Power companies have amazing data, is discos. Telcos have great data. In Punjab, the land has been digitized. That is brilliant data as well. Excise has great data. The service taxes that provinces collect, that's a great data. But that whole data is not talking to each other. So the data per se, digitization is not that bigger a challenge as such. It's only that they are not talking to each other, so we're not taking the maximum benefit of that data out. And why do I say this? Because if you recall, we talked about creating incentive for people to opt for the digital transactions. And the biggest incentive, for example, in case of Kisan card that I quoted to you, was the fact that he was entitled for a credit at interest-free loan, and for the quality inputs.
All right.
So if the data will be talking to each other, you will see digital lending mushrooming, digital lending taking to another leap towards offering people credit, and that will be incentive enough for people to get into the system. In fact, the way I see things pretty hard for the banks in the next 5 years.
Okay, how so?
Because everything is now so much customized that there are technology companies out there who have brilliant credit scoring model. And if you have a data exchange available and that credit scoring model is, let's say, adopted by one of the large departmental stores, let's say Al-Fatah decided to do the, or White Good, I'm thinking of 2-3 use cases now.
Yeah.
Not just Al-Falah alone, Al-Fateh alone, but the car sellers, for example, if they have the access to that data and they have the scorecard available through the technology companies, they don't have to rely on the banks to extend the credit. They can actually do that themselves by selling this on credit to the people and then getting that amount discounted if they have to really from the banks on their own. So banks as an intermediary will have a very different role to play. And these companies for car companies that I'm talking about, or the white good companies, talking about the refrigerators and TVs and all, they are cash-rich companies.
Right.
They can actually extend the credit on their own. All they need is the access to the data and the digital scorecard, access to the digital scorecard, which will actually let you know how much Shizza is entitled to get the get the credit from you, and then you can extend that credit. They will do the job of the bank.
And that's so helpful. But when you say that it's going to get tough for banks in the coming 5 years, it also makes me think now is the time to incorporate AI into helping you with.
So AI is very much an integral part of our system even today.
Okay.
So banks like us, and there are many other banks, they're using it for different purposes. For example, for customer experience, they're using it. For analysis of their own data, their own customer traffic, they're using it. They're using it for digital lending. They're using it for digital payments improvement. That is already very much there. But you see, again, because it's ubiquitous, the AI would be used by the retailer too, by the white goods company as well, by Honda and Toyota too, for selling their own cars. And this is where it becomes a comparative situation for the banks. We also need to reposition ourselves and make sure that we remain competitive. But this whole piece is actually phenomenal in the next 5 to 10 years. The initiative that the Prime Minister has taken is transformational in nature. We always talk about, and Shizza, you would have heard this ad nausea from people about structural changes. This is that one structural change which the Prime Minister has taken, and I must give him the credit for pursuing it in a very rigorous fashion with all the stakeholders.
Right. And, it does make you think when you say structural reform, it definitely is because, yes, we call it the cashless economy movement. But in the end of the day, like you said, 5 to 10 years from now, it's not just about cashless anymore. We're looking at a digital transformation.
Absolutely.
Technological advancements are going on such a fast pace. And
Yeah.
I think Pakistan will be able to move along with the advancements.
Another interesting thing, Shizza, you are much younger than myself, but 70% of Pakistan's population is actually below the age of 23.
Right.
Now that that whole population which is coming up is much more savvy and comfortable with digital transactions
Right.
than the people like ourselves.
So that's good news.
This is a huge news. So we are actually preparing ourselves to cater to this new generation which is coming up, and will be looking towards this. If we will not be able to bring this whole ecosystem together for them, then you may be able to lose out on keeping them out of the system. They'll be looking for something else perhaps.
True, but Mr. Zafar, does this make you think that for this huge transformation or change, you either have to change your employees or either have to train them? Because if this change is so huge, everyone has to be ready or, brace themselves. But I want to take you back to where you said that we have all the data from, let's say, NADRA or let's say FBR for that matter, but it's not connected. They're not talking to each other. So excuse me for a naive question, but what happens when all of this data is in the same place?
So then what will happen is that on one place, you will be able to figure out the spending trends of Shizza. So how much she was paying for her power bill, how much she was spending on the taxes, how much she was spending on what amount of land she owns. You will have that proxy data available to figure out what is her credit worthiness. The way it is being determined in the West, we will have that ability to then assess everybody, and then perhaps attach some kind of score to that creditor too.
Right.
What kind of creditor is that person is? Is this a good credit? Is it a medium credit or a low credit? And then you can determine the amount of money that you are willing to take a risk on. But Shizza, you actually raised a point which is actually the biggest concern for me at this point in time, especially for the banking industry perspective, is training and retraining of our people.
Yeah.
This is the need of the hour.
Because
Really.
it's not like you can take a break first train them, then launch the
You can't.
initiative. No, it has to happen side
It
by side.
simultaneously happens, but interesting piece is that it's such an integral part of your daily life that you will generally find people to be receptive to change themselves, especially the Gen Z and Gen X or whatever we are
Alpha,
talking
yeah.
about. They will be very comfortable to switch to this. This is the good part of the whole thing. It's only the ecosystem we need to make sure is there so that they'll adopt it quickly. To me, adoption, frankly, is not that bigger a problem for the new generation. It's the ecosystem and what we just talked about, the integration of the data, incentive plan for everybody to be part of the documentation of the economy. And then you will see a quantum leap in terms of people responding to this.
Towards the end, I know we're already working on, I think most of Islamabad is already cashless at this point. When can we say that Pakistan is cashless? A realistic answer.
Look, to me, look, we will never be 100% cashless.
Okay.
It's an unrealistic assumption. Even in the largest of the most mature economies also, it's not never 100% cashless. But predominantly cashless is what we should strive for and look forward to. My sense is that, the way we are going, for example, we are now have the target in terms of adoption of increasing the retailers from 500,000 to 2 million who will be accepting the payment through Rast. Now, that's a 4 times increase of where we stand right now.
Yeah.
Just to give you a perspective, in the banking industry, 88% of the transactions right now are done digitally, which used to be 76% before.
That's a good change.
That's a huge change. And the way it's progressing, you will actually come to a mature stage very quickly. And if I were to draw an analogy from there and figure out, I would say that adoption will be very fast provided you have the ecosystem in place. An ecosystem is being put in place through this cashless initiative of the Prime Minister,
Right.
where the most integral part is to get that infrastructure in place where the accessibility of data improves, where the connectivity of the data improve, where it has become more affordable than what it is at this point in time. The government, by the way, on its own account, has already decided to make all their payments digitized. And the target that we are seeing there is around 3 to 4 years. Now, that's a major chunk in its own right. I think the rest of the adoption will take place and will go through 5, 6, 10 years. But the major chunk will happen if we continue with this path, which we are, and the Prime Minister is personally spearheading the whole thing, would not take another maybe 3, 4 years, really.
Okay. That's hopeful, to be honest.
The predominant cashless economy
Right.
in the government to government payments, government to person payments,
Right.
government to business payments, and vice versa.
Last question, a little political, but I think you're pretty capable of answering this. So we are aware, naturally, of course, in a few years' time, governments might change. And this has been a pattern, rather a history, that very fruitful programs that are very helpful for the general public often have to halt because of the change of policies and laws. Now, this is where you come in, because you may be semi-government, but primarily you're a private sector. So it's now depending on you to take this cause forward, even when policies change. Are you ready to do that?
Again, brilliant question, because it's a real question.
Yeah.
It's a real.
It's a reality.
It's a real peril, I would say. It's a real risk. The fact is that, as they call it, the data is the new gold.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it from the perspective that at some point in time, even if there is no change in the government has to step back and withdraw themselves from these kind of supports. And at that time, data that I will have will be the new gold for me to then build on my customer proposition, albeit 50% of the total number that I was doing with the government support would reduce to, let's say, half of it, but it still be very substantial to continue to promote the financial inclusion.
Right.
Secondly, the most important thing is that this kind of program actually, as I told you earlier also, helps in behavioral changes of the consumers. Once that behavioral changes embeds into the system, then it's very difficult to reverse the whole thing. And third thing, Shizza, is that every government that comes through has only changed the nomenclature of that program one way or the other, or improves it or introduce another program. But similar initiatives continue to remain there in one form or the shape, because this is important for the economy, for the people, and for the governments.
Brilliantly answered. Thank you so much, Zafar Masud. You've been a great sport. I would say that I threw questions at you, even that were probably not supposed to be here, but you've been a great sport. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We will keep a track of the updates, or rather development of this very program. Conversations never end. I will see you next week here in the chat room with Shizza.